Okay, Chairman, we're live. You can begin the meeting when you're ready.
Thank you, and good evening and a very warm welcome to the virtual meeting of the Central and South Planning Committee for the London Borough of Hillingdon. This is a virtual meeting that is being broadcast simultaneously on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon London. My name is Councillor Steve Tuckwell and I am the Chairman of this evening's meeting. Now, we are in online format and I think all members and officers are well versed in the online housekeeping that we need to maintain, but just as a quick reminder, if you've got any mobile phones next to you, can you put them on silent? If you're wearing a headset, if you can make sure the microphone is away from your mouth to avoid any background noise, and if you can keep your microphone muted when not speaking and then unmute to speak. Only one person can speak at a time, and I as chairman will call those to speak. Now, we have moved into Microsoft Teams this evening, so we do have the facility to put your hands up, but failing that, as we've normally done, just indicate on the screen and either I or Steve will pick you up from the grid gallery screen that we have in front of us. Okay, we need to do an attendance roll call, so I will call your names, and if you could just indicate that you are present so that those watching can see who we've got. So we'll start with Councillor Chapman, the Vice Chairman this evening.
Good evening, Chairman. Yes, I'm present.
Good evening. Councillor Duncan, the Labour Lead.
Good evening, Chair and everyone. Yes, I'm present. Thank you.
Good evening. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Good evening, Chairman and everybody. I'm present.
Good evening to you. Councillor Birra.
Good evening, Chairman and everybody. I'm present.
Good evening. Councillor Brightman.
Good evening, Chairman and everyone. I'm present.
Good evening, Councillor Brightman. Councillor Chamdow.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. I am present.
Good evening. Councillor Tubadar, I don't think we've seen him join us yet, have we, Steve?
Not yet. I've just sent him an email to send him the correct link, hopefully. So we might get him in a minute.
All right. Well, we'll just put a question mark against Councillor Tubadar. I'm sure he'll join us in due course. Councillor Dillon.
Good evening, Chairman.
Good evening,
I am
Councillor.
present.
Steve, I make that a full house minus Councillor Tubadar for voting members this evening. Is that correct?
Indeed, Chairman.
Okay, we need to do the same process for the officers that are supporting us this evening. So we'll start with our planning officer this evening, Meg Harani.
Good evening, everyone. Present.
Good evening. Our head of planning, James Roger.
I'm present, Chairman.
Good evening to you. Our transport officer this evening, Alan Tilley.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm present.
Good evening, Alan. Our legal advisor this evening, Kerry Monroe.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm present.
Good evening. We have our enforcement manager this evening, Desmond Adamekwe.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm present.
Good evening. And our democratic services officer this evening, looking after us all, keeping order, is Steve Clark.
Present, Chairman.
Good evening. Okay. Is that all officers accounted for, Steve?
Yes, it is, Chairman.
Okay, good. In terms of technical meeting control, if any councillor leaves the virtual meeting pathway through for a lost connection, etc., then the meeting will continue unless we are not quorate, which is 3 councillors. It's also important to note that if any councillor does leave the meeting, if it's more than just a moment or two, then they will not be able to vote on the item that they were not present for. Okay, that is the chairman's announcements and the housekeeping dealt with, so we can now start to move into the main body of this evening's meeting. So we'll start, Steve, with agenda item number 1, apologies for absence.
No apologies for absence tonight, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 2 this evening is declarations of interest and matters coming before this meeting. So does any member or officers have declarations they'd like to declare? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 7. I have not had any involvement in this particular application, but I have discussed the original application for this site with local residents, so I have had some involvement about it. So I will not take part in the debate. I will mute my mic and switch off my video.
Okay. Thank you for that, Councillor Duncan. Any other declarations of interest? No. Okay, then we can move on to agenda item 3, which is to receive the minutes of the last meeting of the 4th of February. Can I take those as agreed? Nods, thumbs up. Yeah, okay, good. So those items we can record as agreed, Steve, yeah? Agenda item 4 is matters notified in advance or urgent, which there aren't any. And just to confirm that agenda item 5 this evening is to confirm that we do have 2 parts to this evening's meeting. Part 1, which is in the public domain, which will cover agenda items 6, 7 and 8. Agendas items 6 and 7 have a petition attached to them. And when we get to the end of agenda item 8, we go into what is called part 2, where we will disconnect the YouTube feed and members and officers will be discussing that item in private. So that is the first part of the agenda, and we can now start to get into the main body of this evening's applications. So I think that's a good point now to start to invite Meg to take us through agenda item 6, which is 26 to 28 Dowding Road, Hillingdon. So Meg, can I hand the baton to you, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Before I go into this item, there is an issue relating to all of the items, and that is that as of yesterday, the London plan, a new London plan was adopted, and so the policies that are set out within the report may well be superseded by policies which are in the new London plan. And I'm asking for members' permission, if you like, to substitute the new London plan policies should we get an appeal on any of the applications that we've got before us. So just to when the reports were written, the London plan that was in force was the old one, which was adopted in 2016, and as of yesterday a new London plan was adopted by the current mayor. So those policies do need to be substituted if we get an appeal. Thank you, Chairman. In relation to the case for 2628 Dowding Road, this is an application for the change of use of these 2 properties from residential to the provision of education use. And the reasons why these properties are chosen, if you like, for this use are set out from on page 9 by the Ministry of Defence in their submission. However, members will know from experience that one of the fundamental policies that the council has and has had for many years is the retention of residential properties, and there are very few times that officers or members will accept the loss of residential properties. There are cases where that may be possible, and a case has to be made for that. The case that has been made, in your officer's view, doesn't meet the requirements, and as set out on page 17, usually when members have accepted or officers have accepted the loss of residential is because the property is no longer capable of being used for that purpose, because it's unfit, in a very poor condition, and there are serious problems in terms of damp, etc., etc. None of these elements apply to these particular properties. Properties are capable of being used for residential, and the reason that the Ministry of Defence and the applicants have given are that they have a lease which in effect stops them from using these properties for residential purposes, and in your officer's view that is not a good reason for allowing the loss of residential when there is a shortage in the borough, there is a shortage across London of residential properties, and the borough is required to provide a minimum number of properties per year, in addition to the existing stock that it has, and every property that is lost needs to be replaced within that year. So the first issue is the fundamental issue of the loss of residential, which your officers would not agree to. There are other issues in relation to the use that's proposed. It is up to 20 individuals that could be attending this school, and that raises issues of noise and disturbance. It's possible that there is a large rear garden area allied to this property, and the use of that area is very likely to impact on the adjoining residential properties. This is a purely residential area, and the use of that garden area allied to the comings and goings associated with the use is likely to impact on the adjoining residential properties in terms of noise and disturbance. And I would say that the comings and goings to the property, you would get some comings and goings obviously from a residential use, but not to the extent that is proposed in relation to this use. We have objections from highways in relation to parking. This is a narrow road. There is limited on-street parking. There's no off-street parking associated with the property, and therefore there are issues in relation to parking, particularly for staff members, if not for dropping off people. And finally, there's issues relating to the provision of facilities for disabled persons, and the access officer has raised objection on that basis, and a reason for refusal relating to that is also attached. So there are a number of reasons why the use is unacceptable in this location, and it is recommended for refusal. If I can just go to the presentation. Sorry, I'm just trying to work out how to.
Yeah, Meg, when you've got the pointer on, you'll have to use the arrow keys to move through the slides. You can't click, unfortunately.
Yep, sorry. Thank you. So we have the site location plan and the restrictions. There are no restrictions in relation to this area. And the current or existing plans showing the layout of the two properties and the proposed plans. So it is total loss of the residential use. All of the uses, all the properties are being used for the proposed use. The detailed plans for the layout, and that is the aerial, and these are the two properties and the rear. So as members can see, it is a narrow road. There is limited on-street parking, and obviously there is competition for that. As this aerial shows you, there's very limited or virtually no off-street parking associated with the properties, and so there is a reliance on on-street parking. So with those four reasons, your officers recommend refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for taking us through that, Meg. Now, this is the first of this evening's petition items. So, Steve, do you want to take us through, in the order that you've got, any petition statements, applicant statements, or indeed ward councillor statements? So I'll let you read us through those.
And just to note, Councillor Tukwell has joined us, and he did see all of the officers' presentation as well. He joined at the start.
Ask that, but thanks for confirming.
Yep. So before I read out the petitioner's statement, they also submitted some photos. So I'm going to share my screen, and whilst I read it out, I'll show the photos. And also to note, Councillor Graham, Ward Councillor for Uxbridge North, has expressed his support for the petitioners of this item. Okay, so on to the petitioner's statement. I would like to express my concerns regarding this application for conversion of 26 to 28 Dowding Road, Hillingdon, into an independent school to accommodate 20 children aged 11 to 17 with behaviour disorders. As my house is next to the proposed conversion of the above property in question, with minimal security, with only a small fence separating my house both front and back from the adjoining property, and other concerns of contributing factor as discussed below. The reasons for my objection are as follows. Number 1, increased traffic movement. This is a residential area, and such activity would result in an increased movement of traffic, which would directly impact on us as a result of disturbance due to the closeness of our house with 26 to 28 Dowding Road. Our main bedroom overlooks Dowding Road. Number 2, safety and security. Our safety and security will be compromised as a result of inadequate security. There is a small wooden fence situated at the front of 26 to 28 Dowding Road and at the rear of our garden, which could easily be accessible into our property due to the nature and size of it. See picture enclosed, picture 1A, which is what you can see in front of you. At the side of the property, and in conjunction to the front of our house, there is also inadequate fencing, which again could negatively impact on our safety and security. See picture enclosed. There is a partial brick wall erected at the side of both houses, which gives minimal security. See picture 1B. Number 3, intrusion of privacy. Our privacy will be greatly compromised as a result of an upstairs back window of 26 to 28 Dowding Road, which directly overlooks our sitting room. This would be an intrusion of our privacy if this was made accessible to the children. One of my upstairs bedrooms would overlook the proposed playground at the rear of the property. I'm very concerned about accusations being made of being a peeping Tom when I open my window on a warm day, or even objects being thrown through my window. My large lounge side window curtain would have to remain closed due to the position of the school and my window. This would greatly intrude on our privacy. So this is photo 2A, which is the overlooking window, and there's also 2B. Number 4, noise pollution. The increased movement of through traffic will also impact noise pollution to the surrounding neighbourhood. The rear garden of 26 to 28 Dowding Road is quite small to accommodate outdoor activities for this age group of children, which again would contribute to significant noise pollution. Again, one of our bedrooms overlooked the area for the playground. The noise would be unbearable for people of our age. I am 81 and my wife is 76, which would impact on our mental well-being. This type of noise pollution would not only affect us, but also neighbouring residents as described in their signed petition and written statement. This type of noise would be incurred from 8:30 to 4:30 Monday to Friday, which would inflict disturbance, anxiety and stress. The proposed conversion of the above property into a school would negatively impact on the environment and would be out of character within a quiet and peaceful neighbourhood and neighbouring residential street. In conclusion, taking into consideration the points addressed above, giving reasons for my objection in respect to the proposed conversion of 26 to 28 Dowding Road into a day school for 11 to 17-year-old children with behaviour problems, would directly impact on the surrounding neighbourhood in respect of disturbance and out of character issues within a peaceful and quiet neighbourhood. Also, both me and my wife are retired pensioners and will have to endure this disruption continually each day, which would be unbearable. Also, this would greatly impact on my wife's medical health, for which she is under the care of our doctor, and could gravely impact on her health due to continuous fears and anxiety. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve, and thank you to the petitioner for providing that statement. I'm sure members will take on board the points raised. Do we have anything from the applicant, Steve?
Yes, we do. So we have the applicant's written statement as well, which I'll move on to now. I understand that the above application has objections on the following grounds and wish to contribute additional information in support of my application. Number 1, diminution of housing stock. This property is not and will not become available for the housing of local residents. It is a Crown MOD property on Ministry of Defence land and is not available for general sale or rent. It has been unoccupied for around 20 years as it has been converted into a playgroup youth centre, which is no longer required by the Ministry of Defence due to the closure of the RAF Uxbridge site. The property is falling into disrepair and is not currently habitable. There are issues with damp in the walls, the drainage is currently blocked by tree roots, and it will require significant works, which we will complete to clear. The windows are currently blocked by condensation between the glazing panels, meaning there is a lack of natural light inside. Our works to bring the building back into a state of good repair will improve the street scene and prevent further degeneration of the building. All other properties in the street are used by the MOD for service families accommodation, and so approval of this change of use would not set a precedent for other properties in the street. Number 2, noise and disturbance. Our students cannot attend mainstream schools as they are very anxious and withdrawn. Many of our students have felt unable to leave their bedrooms for years. Most are elective mute, meaning they do not speak. For these reasons, our students are notably quieter than any other children and far quieter than the usual children present and playing within this residential street. All our centres are in residential properties as this is necessary for our therapeutic approach. Our children are too anxious to attend buildings that do not feel home-like. We currently have 5 existing centres in residential properties and have had these for 25 years. There has not been a single complaint relating to noise or disturbance for any of these properties in any of this time, and neighbours are frequently very supportive of the work being done. The supporting letter from the Hillingdon School Place Planning Project Manager clearly states that there is a need in the borough for school places with a therapeutic approach like ours, and that there is a requirement for these places to be provided in residential properties in order that the environment is suitable for our students. Due to the nature of our students, there would be very little noise or disturbance in the garden. Our students are with us because they are too timid and quiet to cope in mainstream schools. Activities in the garden would be limited to gardening, horticulture, and would improve the aesthetics of the garden, which has currently been subject to frequent fly tipping and overgrowth. Activity in the garden would be limited to 2 to 3 students and 1 adult, meaning this would be similar to residential gardening activities. We would accept a proposed reduction in student numbers with a resultant reduction in staffing if this would mean the permission could be granted. Number 3, parking. None of our other centres have staff parking available. We are committed to environmentally friendly travel and do not allow staff to drive to work. Most of our staff use public transport, however some cycle, run or walk to work. We will be providing a staff shower to support this, as well as a cycle rack to the rear of the property to accommodate 5 bicycles. As this racking will be removable, it has not been shown on the plan. The on-street de-restricted parking is currently largely vacant during daytime working hours. This has been surveyed over recent weeks, as the residential properties are occupied exclusively by families working at local military bases, meaning they leave for work during daytime hours. Any overspill or additional parking could be comfortably accommodated during daytime hours, and the on-street parking would be available for residents outside of working hours. We would do our best to avoid any additional parking, and staff would not be permitted to drive to work. Number 4, accessibility. The site will be accessible using a modular disabled access ramp to the rear of the property. TerraQuest advised that as the ramp is modular, it did not need to be shown on the plan. The ground floor bathrooms will have disabled access, and there will be a residential style chairlift fitted to the stairs. We really appreciate consideration being given to our proposal and are happy to accept conditions for permission to be granted. Okay, that's the applicant's statement, Chairman.
Okay, no, thank you for reading that out. And again, may I pass on my thanks to the applicant for submitting their statement. And again, I'm sure members will take on board the points that have been included in that statement. Okay, right, there's no more statements to read out, is there, Steve? Okay, so I can see here on my screen, Kerry Monroe, you're indicating. So I'm going to ask if you want to go first in case there's anything that might be supportive to members. Kerry?
Chairman, thanks for the opportunity to discuss my point. I know the planning officer mentioned that policy was adopted, the London plan was adopted yesterday, and I haven't seen an addendum circulated. Well, it hasn't been brought to my attention, but it's important that members have salient information when making their decision. So I'm wondering if Meg could break down the policy that's applying to this item tonight, so members can factor that into their decision. I know this application has a petition, and it's we've received commentary from the applicant and an objection, and it's recommended for refusal. And if it was to be appealed, I think it's important that members know what this new policy is saying, so they've got an open mind when coming to their conclusion on what their determination is on this application.
Okay, thank you for that, Kerry. Before I go to the hands that are raised here, Meg, can you come in and pick up any of those points, or indeed James?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The relevant policies, page 12, relates to policy LPP 3.14, existing housing as it is, and the new policy in the London plan is virtually the same, and basically both of them say that the loss of existing housing would not be acceptable except in very exceptional circumstances, and I've gone through that, and that policy is reflected in policy DMH1 of the local plan, and I've gone through the implications of that in my presentation. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, Meg. So again, I think if you could just do that the same for the remaining applications tonight, so that we can make sure that members are informed of the very new change of policy. Are you okay with that, Kerry?
Yes, Chairman, that's the correct approach.
Okay.
I think it's an awkward predicament because it was only brought in yesterday, and this agenda would have been published weeks, days ago. So it's just something that is a sensible way to approach. It's
the right point to make. So thank you for making it. So, okay, right. I've now got a number of hands raised. So Councillor Ahmed Walana, you had your hand up very early on and you seem to have taken it down. I'm going to give you the opportunity if you wanted to speak first on this item, or was that a mistake when you put your hand up?
Thank you, Chairman. There was something else. I just couldn't see the presentation initially, so that's why I just raised my hand, but I could not interrupt, so that's fine. In terms of making my points on this application, obviously there are several issues on this application, including noise pollution, disturbance in residential area, unexpected and heavy traffic, and expectation that how many people will be visiting in a particular residential area. So I'm against it. I will hear what my other colleagues say.
Okay. No, thank you, Councillor. So I've got Councillor Chapman, Councillor Dillon, and then Councillor Duncan. So we'll go in that order. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I can see what the applicant's getting at with this, and I'm somewhat sympathetic to definitely sympathetic to the intentions. Also, I can empathise with the school's placing officer for that matter. However, as Councillor Walana has alluded to, there are four very good reasons for refusal. I was particularly struck, frankly, when looking at the photographs, the potential noise and disturbance and overlooking of adjacent properties, for example, but particularly with the parking and the lack of disability access. I appreciate it's been converted, but fundamentally it was converted illegally, and it is, from planning perspective, housing. And equally, I accept that quite possibly, shall we say, normal civilian residents aren't going to live around there, but it is still nonetheless a residential area. I don't think Councillor Walana proposed anything, so on that basis, I'm happy to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Before I go to Councillor Dillon, I can see Kerry indicating in case there's a legal point here.
I'm grateful, Chairman, to have the opportunity to speak again. I'm just referring back to Councillor Walana. It's important that all members do see the presentation so they can have their minds open and receive the relevant information to make a determination. So we would need, I mean, if if the member didn't see it, then I wouldn't suggest that he votes or that the presentation is re-looked at. I'm not sure if anybody else, any of the other decision makers were not able to see.
Okay, good point. And I'll ask Councillor Ballon, did you see the presentation, or were you not able to see the presentation?
No, I couldn't see the presentation.
Okay, I'll take a cue from Kerry here. What I would suggest that you probably sit this one out then if you've not been able to see the full images and plans, etc. You okay with that, Kerry?
There must be something wrong with this. I'm on my iPad and I used to use it for the meetings, so I can see. I used to see all the presentation, but today I don't know what's wrong with this new system.
Okay, well let's check before we get onto the next application. But let's get on with the debate. And I've got Councillor Dillon patiently waiting, followed by Councillor Duncan and Councillor Chamdale. So Councillor Dillon, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question relates to the conversion. It was converted many years ago. We have not seen any evidence of that in the internal. So it's just to go from paragraph 3 on the summary, really. Given that it was converted and we've acknowledged that, isn't there a rule set in place, even though the planning permission hasn't been granted for that conversion, that this would be allowed? I'm sympathetic to it, the application, but I also understand the reasons. But I wouldn't want us to come a cropper when it comes to an appeal. I'm sure there's a good answer for it. Otherwise, James has put his hand up already, so I know there is a good answer. And I look forward to hearing it.
Over to you, James.
So I'll just come off mute. In this particular case, there was no planning application submitted. At the point in time, we believe there was a temporary educational use. And the relevance of this is, so had the use started without consent and continued for a long period of time, it might have then sort of reached a stage that they could have submitted a certificate of lawfulness, or it could be deemed lawful. In this particular case, we understand it was a short period of time. The use then ceased. And it, in effect, for that reason, when we look at the planning history, we're seeing this as a residential property, albeit it is currently vacant and has been for some time, but we still see it as a residential use. And if I could just, while I'm speaking, Chairman, it's possible, I think it may help if I say that I do concur with Kerry's view that if a councillor didn't see the presentation, unfortunately, I don't think that they can vote on the item.
No, thanks for confirming that. I think I completely agree with that as well. So, okay, Councillor Dillon, you okay with that? Councillor Dillon, looks like he's frozen. Okay, right, we'll move on to Councillor Duncan, I think, who indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I feel very sympathetic to this. It was very sad to hear of the children and young people who this facility will serve. I'm very pleased that there are organisations working with them, and particularly with all the pressures that children are now undergoing through the pandemic, there may well be an increased demand for this, but it simply is not the right building. If it had been a residential building on its own, away from neighbours or further away from neighbours, maybe that would have been a better building that could have looked at more sympathetically. Because once it's used, if we gave permission for this and it was used for school purposes, then even though this use may be very quiet because of the nature of the children attending, at some point it could become used for school purposes for other children, perhaps with very noisy behavioural difficulties. And so it just sadly is simply in the wrong place. So I would like to second the officer's recommendation for refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duncan. I've got Councillor Chamdale who's indicated. Councillor Chamdale?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate the points I've made. I mean, being an ex-school governor who looked after SEND, you know, these kind of places are absolutely invaluable in teaching children who are having difficulty in the mainstream. There's a lot of points have been raised by the officers, valid points. I understand the in the petition they did mention, sorry, the petition they did mention about other sites they had, but there's no comparisons being made in terms of where this house, these houses are situated. If you look at it, it's almost like a cul-de-sac, and you know, there'll be people going in and out, and I don't believe this is, as Councillor Duncan said, you know, she said it correctly, that it's in the wrong place. If it had been, you know, a main road or somewhere else, you know, where there's one-way access that way, one-way access the other way, possibly. And at the moment, the end use at the moment is commendable, but should that end use change, then I believe, you know, it's not fair on the neighbours for the reasons that I've stated in the report. And I think it's already been seconded, so I would also go with officer's report. On the point in the presentation with Councillor Wallana, he has everything that's been presented. He has it in our pack. The only thing he hasn't seen is photographs. So if it was a case where you want him to vote, if we just show the photographs again, I mean, everything that Meg has said is in our packs, and which we all read a week ago. So just my hang on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Chamdow. We'll see where we go with Councillor Wallana's next item. I think it's his iPad that's preventing him from seeing the presentation, although he does have an electronic version of the same presentation as well. Okay, question I've got before we open it up for the vote potentially. The petitioner mentioned security, safeguarding and privacy. Do we think that the conditions cover that point off sufficiently in terms of, you know, safeguarding both ways, but also the privacy and security aspect? Are the conditions sufficient for that?
Thank you, Chairman. It's a difficult issue because in terms of the privacy, these are existing windows. And obviously people can look out of them as residential properties, so given the location, there's obviously going to be some issues of privacy with adjoining neighbours. So it's a difficult one for us to say that the use of this windows, or there might be an increase in the numbers of people, or an increase in the loss of privacy from these existing windows. So we've not had a reason for refusal relating to that. And again, similar issues with security and so on. This is in the main a daytime use, and generally security issues are covered by sort of overlooking from adjoining neighbours and so on, if you like, in a neighbourhood watch style. So there's not likely to be any security issues in relation to the proposed use. And again, that is the reason why we've not got a reason for refusal relating to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. No, thank you for that, Meg. I'm not seeing anybody else indicate, but I am conscious about Councillor Ahmed Wallana, and I'm thinking, Meg, can you just try to show the images again to see if Councillor Ahmed Wallana can see them?
Yeah.
It might add a couple of minutes to the meeting, but I think all members would appreciate Councillor Ahmed Wallana being in.
So this is the rear of the property, and
just to confirm, Councillor Ahmed Wallana, can you see these images?
No.
No.
You can't. Okay.
So should
if Councillor Ahmed Wallana can't see them, then there's not a lot of point going through them, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
So, okay, we'll have to have a little think about how we're going to work this for the next two applications. But I think on the basis of that, you've not been able to see the images.
Chairman, ask him to log out and log back in, possibly.
Yeah, this might be an idea.
He's not voting on this one, so he might as well log out.
Do you want to do that, Councillor Ahmed Wallana? Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, and we'll wait for you to rejoin before we start the next next item.
Thank you.
Okay, I can't see any other councillors indicating, so we will go straight to the vote. So Councillor Chapman, you moved. Councillor Ahmed-Bolana is not participating in this vote. Councillor Brightman?
Go with officers' recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdale?
Officers' recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar?
For refusal, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan seconded. Councillor Bira?
Thank you, Chairman. I go with the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon?
I move the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Steve, I make that 7 votes for rejection or for officer's recommendation, and Councillor Ahmed-Bolana did not participate in the vote.
Yes, Chairman, the item's refused.
Okay, I can confirm then item 6 this evening is refused. Okay, we got through that one eventually, so we can now move on to agenda item 7, which is 26A Hawthorne Crescent. Councillor Duncan, you're going to disconnect your microphone and camera for this one, and we'll invite you back in at the start of the next item. Okay, right, agenda item 7. Meg, over to you to talk us through this one, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Very quick presentation. This is an application for the conversion of the roof of an existing building to habitable accommodation and the installation of a rear dormer. As members will note from the planning history, this is a new property that was granted permission in 2017 and 2019. So the property that was granted permission was for 2 beds, and this would be an additional bedroom to it. In relation to the dormer window, your officers consider that it does not comply with the current policies that are set out in terms of its size and scale, and therefore it's recommended for refusal. There were issues raised originally by the highways officer, as the property or the plans that were submitted did not include the parking space that was allocated to the property when it was originally granted. That has been resolved. We do have a plan which indicates the same space being for this property. So the highways officer is now satisfied that there would be no issues in relation to highways on this. So the only issue relates to the size and scale of the dormer and its impact on the character of the property. And for that reason, we are recommending refusal. Just to go back to Kerry's point on the London plan, there are no London plan policies which within the refusal reasons which would need replacing in this particular case. If I just go to the presentation. Can I just check that everybody can see that?
Yes, I can see.
Councillor Ahmed-Bolana?
No, Chairman, I'm sorry, I can't see it.
Okay. Before we go through the images, Councillor Ahmed-Bolana, have you got access to the presentation that was circulated in Steve Clark's email? Because you could just follow this exactly the same images that were circulated to all members yesterday. If you can confirm you can see those, then I'm sure we can.
I can confirm in just a couple of minutes. You carry on with the meeting, so I can confirm.
Okay. Keep going, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the site plan and the restriction plan. There are no constraints in this property or the surrounding streets. And this is a revised plan which does indicate the parking space which was shown in this position belonging to this property, and that space has been shown again in this position. So as I said before, no issues in relation to parking and highways. This is the property as was granted permission originally, and the floor plans. and that's the proposed new floor with the additional bedroom. And that shows the size and scale of the dormer window. It's virtually the width of the existing roof, barring 500mm settings from either side. And your officers consider that that is not subordinate to the original roof or the property itself, and recommending refusal on that basis. That's unfortunately the photographs were taken while the property is under construction, so it's going to be very difficult to show you much of the property, but there are photos of the surrounding properties and they're very similar in design and appearance. So if you imagine the size of the dormer, then it would be virtually across one of these roofs. And so with that, it's recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Meg. Before we go over to Steve, Councillor Ahmed Walana, can you confirm that you was able to see the images on the email that was sent?
Chairman, unfortunately, I don't have access to the emails right now.
Okay. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to preclude you from voting on this item as well, if you've not been able to see the full presentation, either online or in the virtual pack. So, okay, Steve, if you could take us through the petition statements. I think we've got a ward councillor statement as well, haven't we?
Yes, two on this one. So we've got the petitioner and the ward councillor. Just for Councillor Ahmed Walana, I'll not for this item, but so you can vote on the next item, I'll quickly send through the presentation so you have it for the start of the next item. Okay, so onto the petitioner statement. A total of 22 residents signed the petition objecting to the proposed conversion of roof space to habitable use, including a rear dormer and 3 front lights. A further 8 residents asked to sign the petition after submission, which is indicative of the strength of feeling regarding this development amongst local residents. There is a general consensus and concern amongst the petitioners that this development is destined to become a HMO. The roof of the development is now completed and the dormer window frames are in place to the front of the property. A staircase leading up to the roof space has been installed, which is visible from King's Road. If this application is granted, residents of Edison Close, who the applicants have failed to even acknowledge on any of their numerous planning applications, have raised concerns that they will be unable to use their gardens due to the invasion of privacy as a result of the dormer windows in the elevated roof space as they directly overlook their gardens. The addition of a second building on the plot in the form of an oversized shed will further increase the number of rent-paying residents. Although the plans on this application show some modifications have been made, the construction of this building is already in progress using the dimensions of the initial drawings. The footprint of this new building has only been made possible due to the applicant removing the public footpath and the large bank of earth at the back of numbers 5, 7, 9, 11 and 13 Kings Road, which had been present since the 1970s. This is in direct contravention to the initial planning agreement, which stipulated that no change will be made to the existing ground levels. The council was made aware of this several times, but no action appears to have been taken regarding this. Fences of neighbouring properties have been damaged, all the foliage and established trees have been removed against the planning agreement. This has also been raised with the council on numerous occasions, but to no avail. There is still no acknowledgement of the 70-foot high ash tree, which is situated less than 5 metres from the development on any of the planning applications, which begs the question of how much time and scrutiny the council actually invest in these plans. A retaining wall, which is essential to prevent the collapse of the gardens of King's Road due to the unauthorised removal of the large bank of earth and the trees by the applicants, has still not been erected 3 years later. Parking is also an issue. The increased number of residents afforded by this additional development will require additional parking. The petitioners have stated that parking is already an issue with most existing households owning a car, but being unable to park outside of their own properties due to limited parking spaces. This is compounded by the fact that the applicant has currently converted several of the existing residents' parking spaces into a storage area for skips and building materials. This development is now entering its 4th year, The location of the development has meant that many residents have had to contend with constant noise and disruption as a result of contractors working outside of agreed hours. Deliveries often take place well before 8 AM, and weekends in particular are ruined for most of us due to the constant loud chatter and construction noise. Little notice is paid to the residents who raise objections with the applicant individually. We are largely ignored and accused of racism. For all of the petitioners, our last 3 summers have been ruined by this development, as we have been unable to enjoy our own gardens due to the noise, dust, and being overlooked by the contractors on site. We fully expect that the same thing will happen this year. Had the applicant stuck to their initial plans for a 2-bedroomed dwelling, the construction would have been completed by now and we could all get on with our lives. We have all at some stage contacted the council to complain about the issues mentioned above, but little or no action seems to have been taken. Hillingdon Council declares itself to be putting residents first. Unfortunately, it appears that feel this obviously does not apply to all residents. Okay, that's the petitioner's statement. I'm going to move on to Ward Councillor for West Drayton, Councillor Sweeting, who's also submitted a statement. I ask that members of the Central and South Planning Committee consider my comments on the above application as Ward Councillor for West Drayton. I support both the officer's recommendation for refusal as well as the points raised in the petition of residents. The reasons for refusal are well explained in the officer report, namely that the proposal, if approved, would result in the proposed rear dormer window creating a top-heavy appearance, harmful to the design of the dwelling and character of the area. It would be too bulky, too large, and would not harmonise with the design of the original dwelling. It would create a building not in keeping with the current street scene and surrounding area. The proposed dormer window will cover more than 2/3 of the width of the main roof, with windows even larger than those on the first floor, so creating a very odd appearance, completely out of proportion with the rest of the building. Although the report states that the distances between the buildings should not be less than 21 metres between facing habitable rooms, this is already not the case with this infill development. And although the report states that the proposal will not lead to a material increase in overlooking, it will lead to the building being even more dominant to the neighbours, who are already faced with a building which, even in planning terms, is too near to the other properties. In essence, if the large dormers were allowed, it would create an incongruous, overpowering and ugly form of development. The report also highlights that there are no parking spaces attached to this property, and with no possibility of any being provided. Hawthorne Crescent is already a road where on-road parking spaces are at a premium. Adding capacity to this building will make the current parking pressures even worse. I therefore ask the committee to support the officer's recommendation of refusal and the petition of residents. I thank the committee for considering the points I've raised in my request that the application be refused. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Nothing from the applicant, I take it?
Not for this one.
No. Okay, so just to say thank you to the petitioner for submitting their statement, and of course thank you to Councillor Sweeting for submitting her words as well. Okay, right, we can now throw this open to debate. I've got Councillor Chapman with a hand up, or was that an old hand from last time?
That's an old one from last time, Chairman. My apologies.
Right. Anybody want to start the debate on agenda item 7 this evening? I've got Councillor Chapman. You've come back with your hand up. Councillor Dillon, and then Councillor Chamdale. Councillor Chapman?
No, Chairman. I don't know what's happening, but I've not put my hand up.
Oh, it's up on the screen here. So okay, we'll go to Councillor Dillon.
Councillor Chapman, not. There we go.
Can I?
Over to you, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see no reason for much debate on this one. It is oversized. It would, when you look at the 4 properties, be really dominant within that area, especially from that angle. I would move the officer's recommendation, to be honest with you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Chamdale?
Yeah, it's more like a 3rd floor on the dormer. It covers the whole side. The windows are too large. But yeah, and I'll be more than happy to second that. But in addition to that, also, you know, with the public watching as well, you know, if there are issues with building, you know, they are strict controls in terms of what time people can start work and finish work and the weekend work. And we have a process at the council. And we also have locally elected councillors who can assist as well. So if there ever is an issue, find out who your local councillor is, then get them involved.
Yeah, I think you made some good points there, Councillor Chamdale. Any other members wishing to indicate on this one? We are moved and seconded. Okay, I think we can go straight to the vote then. So,
Okay.
Okay, we can go straight to the vote then. Councillor Chapman. You're on mute, Councillor.
Oh, sorry. Not having a good night, am I? Go with officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Ahmed Walana, you're not taking part in this vote. Councillor Brightman.
I go with officer's recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdale, you seconded. So it's Councillor Tubadar.
Go for officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan is sitting this application out. So that's Councillor Bira.
I go with officer's recommendation for refusal, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon moved the application. So that's unanimous 6 out of 6. Well, 6 out of 6. And Councillor Ahmed Walana, Councillor Duncan not taking part in the vote. Can you confirm, Steve?
Yes, Chairman, the application is refused.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. Agenda item 7 is refused. Okay, right, that brings us to the end of this evening's petition items. So we can now move into the last item in part 1 this evening, agenda item 8. It's a non-petition item, and it is for the rear of numbers 1 to 3 Colham Mill Road, West Drayton. So Meg, can you take us through this one, please?
Sorry, Chairman, if I can just come in there. Can we just confirm we've got Councillor Duncan back?
Oh, apologies, yes.
In the meeting.
I can see Councillor Duncan, that you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
And I think before we go over to Meg, Councillor Ahmed Walana, can you confirm that you've now received the picture pack for the presentation and that you can see that?
Yes, Chairman, I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Steve.
So you can now take part in the debate and the subsequent votes. Right. It's been one of those nights tonight. So over to you, Meg, to take us through agenda item 8.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application which relates to land to the rear of 1 to 3 Colham Mill Road. The frontage properties are 2 stories and they have fairly small rear gardens. This particular plot of land did have 3 garages on it, but they have gone, and this is an application. The proposed containers have already been placed on the site, so this is an application for the retention and alteration of these containers. If I could point members to page 40 of the agenda, members will note that back in 2016, an application for a residential dwelling on this site, a bungalow, was refused for 4 reasons, and that refusal was appealed and was subsequently dismissed on appeal. The 4 reasons related to the impact on 2 and 3 Colham Mill Road, and that reason was upheld by the inspector, and he did consider that there would be an impact on 2 and 3 Colham Mill Road. There was a reason for refusal relating to parking and access arrangements. The inspector did not support the council on that. He felt that there was sufficient parking provided and there was sufficient on-street parking available for the property, and therefore he didn't consider that there was a parking reason for refusal. In terms of the 3rd reason for refusal, there are no habitable rooms, so that wouldn't apply in this case. And the 4th reason related to the character, to the impact on the character of the surrounding area in particular, and the inspector did not support the council on that basis. Turning to the current application, the issue relating to parking and access There is sufficient parking provided on the site to comply with the council standards in relation to the proposed use, so we're not recommending that a refusal on parking grounds can be sustained at appeal, particularly given the appeal decision. Secondly, the impact on the adjoining occupiers reason, the proposed dwelling was 4 metres high. It was 7.5 to 8 metres from the back of the rear of the properties at 2 and 3 Colham Mill Road. These containers are substantially less in height, 2.7 maximum, and they are sited the furthest point away that can be sited from these residential properties at approximately 12 metres. So there has been an increase in the distance between the properties and a decrease in the actual scale of the dwelling. And again, given that most of these properties have 2 metre fences, these containers would be 0.7 metres above those fences. Your officers would not recommend a reason for refusal on the impact on adjoining occupiers. And in relation to the character, these are shipping containers. They can be seen from adjoining properties. However, they have been amended, and in the main they don't appear as shipping containers, as members will see from the photographs. And again, given the appeal decision, your officers would not recommend a reason for refusal on character issues. So given that most of the reasons for refusal that officers might have considered were previously considered and not supported by an inspector, your officers consider that there is not really an option other than to recommend approval on this application. So if I go to the presentation, that's the site, the access. Again, members considered, or officers, the inspector considered the access was suitable and was also safe, and also that the parking provided was suitable. So that's the access that's proposed. The containers are located in this position here, and the main impact previously was on these 2 properties as the bungalow was sited in this position here. So these are being removed further away from the residential properties, and now there's a reduced impact. So you've got parking provided. And these are just photographs submitted by the applicant and the plans. As I said before, there have been amended these containers, and in the main their appearance has been reduced, if you like, from a shipping container type to more of an outhouse, an outbuilding. So these, obviously there are some angles where you would get a shipping container view, but there are obviously other angles where you wouldn't have thought that these were shipping containers. So your officers consider that a refusal on visual impact would be difficult to sustain. And these are the existing that have been put on site. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you for that, Meg. We've got anything from ward councillors on this?
Not on this item, Chairman.
Okay. Right, Councillor Ahmed Walana, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Chairman. This time I'm all right.
You was able to see the images, yeah?
As you can see, there is no public harm actually, a fear of public harm, and the safety issues. I don't see any reason not to approve it. And obviously, the size of the containers, they look actually nice. But other than that, it's just okay for me to. I would like to hear from my colleagues, but I'm happy to move.
Did I hear that you're moving officer's recommendation there?
So, yes, indeed, Chairman.
All right, well, we've got some other councillors that have indicated they'd like to participate in the debate, so we'll go to Councillor Duncan, followed by Councillor Dillon. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was rather surprised to see this. I do pass by this site when I'm driving from my house, and these are shipping containers. They're the sorts of things you see on the docks at Dover. And in the plans, for example, that are submitted, we don't see anything about facilities for office staff, toilets or anything like that. And as far as I know, I don't think they do have anything in there. And I'm not quite sure what the relationship is, but I think this piece of land is owned or is part of the cafe that's on the corner of the High Street and Colham Mill Road. And certainly at one time, the electricity supply to these shipping containers ran across the road from the cafe to these containers, which of course was, I think that was reported, and I don't know what the outcome of that was. But before we go down the road of approving shipping containers, which, how can you say that that's in character with anything? I do take the point that Meg makes about when there was a proposal for a bungalow that didn't meet certain criteria and that was not supported by the inspector, but I would ask that we do have a site meeting and just go and have a look at this before we start approving these kind of things, because if they're approved here, then they're going to be coming everywhere. And I noticed that although there is a condition suggested for condition 4, use within the same use class, if it's going to be office and it's going to be within this use class E, that now also includes residential. So if these things are going to start popping up with we don't know what facilities in them, it could well end up that some of these may become residential uses. So I would just ask that we all have a look at this and do this, because I do think that we are taking a step over a line if we do approve this. Thank you.
No, thank you for that, Councillor Duncan. I'm going to throw this open to both Meg and James. I made it 3 points there. One was the sort of welfare facilities, I guess toilet facilities that was raised, the ownership, and then safeguarding future usage. So, Meg, can you pick those up?
Thank you, Chairman. The plans, Councillor Duncan is correct. The plans do not indicate facilities for staff, and I think that we can request detailed plans of the internal layout, and which would include these facilities by condition. I don't think that that we can refuse the item because or have a reason for refusal because these facilities aren't there. We can certainly add a condition requiring those. In terms of the use, the condition 4 that is recommended does specify that it should only be used as an office use within that use class. So anything else within that use class is excluded from for use. So residential use would be excluded, as well as many of the other uses which are within Class E. This is specifically Class EG 1, which is the office use and for no other purpose. So it is a very restrictive condition in relation to the use. So I think that is sufficient to prevent uses which might impact in a different way on adjoining occupiers. And in terms of the Councillor Duncan's suggestion in relation to a site visit, obviously that isn't something for members to debate, but obviously your officers would support a site visit if members felt that they needed to have a look at the impact in terms of the impact on adjoining occupiers, the visual impact as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, Meg. Councillor Duncan, did you want to come back on any of those points?
No, I appreciate that we could ask for, toilet facilities to be put in, but I don't think this is on mains drainage anyway. So, but I mean, there would be nothing to stop them putting that in. But at the moment, I don't think there are really facilities to the site. So it is operating without those things at the moment. It is being used. And there are congregations of people gathering there, if I can put it that way.
Okay. All right, thank you, Councillor Duncan. I've got Councillor Dillon, followed by Councillor Chamdow. So, Councillor Dillon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I concur with Councillor Duncan's points on utilities and use of toilet facilities, etc. I have no objection in it being them being shipping containers, however, and we do see other councils now approving and using shipping containers for housing. So but there is always a place for them, and it has to be appropriate. I wonder if Meg has a picture that shows the other angle, so looking onto the other wall, as it were, where there are properties. That could we see that and see what it looks like from that perspective?
Meg, if you could put that up, and then Councillor Ahmed Boulana, if you could just follow on your online pack as well.
Yeah, so that particular picture, if I can go back, is looking at it from that direction. And that's as you go into the site. And that as well. So obviously, these are the properties on Colham Mill Road. So those are these. So the view from
it's the view looking out of that window, really, that I'm after.
Sorry, the
view looking out. So if you looked out of those windows, where would you look onto?
The ground floor uses are commercial, so they would, in essence, get a view of the roof, if you like. But the view that those properties would get would be this one.
Apologies, you might not be understanding what I'm trying to get at. So if you were in the office and you were looking out of these windows here.
Yeah.
So that if you were stood on that green step, what would you look out onto?
So they would be looking, if I can go to the site plan, sorry. So the windows that and the green step are in these positions here, so they're looking towards 1 and 3.
I think I can help this one, Meg. If you could go to the image at the front of the container or the office, converted office, that one you can see in the reflection there, Councillor Dillon. Yeah, so okay. That's essentially what they'll be seeing. Like there's a bulk skip there, and obviously that wall with the fence on the top. Does that help, Councillor Dillon?
It does, and that window that we can see in that reflection is within a certain distance or outside a certain distance for overlooking, etc.?
So that window is maximum 12 meters from these containers.
And it's not a bedroom or something, is it? Or
The reflected property is a residential property, so that would be a habitable room. But obviously, there are no habitable rooms in the containers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you just go back to that image, please, Meg?
All right.
I'm going to jump in quickly before Councillor Chamdow. The security camera there that's on the top sort of left-hand side.
Yeah.
We just want to be making sure that that doesn't impact on any of the neighbouring bedroom windows.
I'm not sure that is a security camera. It looks like sort of little floodlights.
Security lights.
Security lights, sorry, security lights.
Yeah,
that's what I meant to
but
say.
They
Apologies.
are down so that they wouldn't impact on the residential properties.
Okay, all right. Well, let's see what other members have got to say. So, Councillor Chamdow.
Thank you, Chairman. Scratching my head on this one. How's much higher than us have decided on certain points that we can't go on parking? So, okay, we can't object to that. Obviously, officers have got objections to this. Now, it's a container, nothing more, nothing less. Whether you put windows on the front of it, it's still a container, and it is a container. I welcome the point. I noted the point that what condition can we add, because I can see this becoming a residential unit very quickly. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm not being in other way. We've just been on this committee a long time, and we can see these things happening. As to a site visit, I'm not sure what we can gain greatly from that, but I think there is some merit to that, because it'll give us an opportunity to look at other things. Obviously, entry, egress, egress, it's big enough. Can we get through? And what is the use at the moment for it? I mean, containers at the back with a bit of windows on the front. I mean, it's still containers. So I'm hearing the point that I would like to go and see it, to exactly what use it's operating at the moment, and possibly, long term, looking at not preventing, but being able to see other possible developments such as this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chamdow. Right, I've got a couple of other councillors indicating. So I've got Councillor Ahmed Walana, Councillor Chapman, and I think Councillor Dillon again. So we'll go in that order. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can confirm that I could see the presentation now miraculously, so that's wonderful. Just to echo what Councillor Chamdow said, and obviously Councillor Duncan said as well. So it would be a good idea to defer to a site visit. So whatever majority says, that's fine. I'm quite happy with that.
Okay. Well, you actually moved the recommendation at the very start. So are you moving a site visit?
I did move, but I mean, obviously, after listening to my colleagues, and we should not leave any stone unturned to ensure that we are making the right decision. So that's why I can move to for a site visit, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, I'm getting a sense of what members are feeling on this, but let's let a couple of people indicate. So I've got Councillor Chapman, Councillor Brightman, and Councillor Chamdow again. So Councillor Chapman. You're on mute, Councillor. There you go.
I think maybe we need to have lessons in this, to be honest. I was gonna echo, but I couldn't say anything to echo, could I? I was just going to repeat, really, in a way, what's been said by various councillors. I do think there's a lot of merit with a virtual site visit. I'd like to see, if you like, a 360-degree surround of what this looks like to, who can see this and how close they are, so to speak. It's not clear to me about the access to the site, etc. It's funny, like, part of me thinks there's no problems with this. What's the problem, so to speak? And other parts of me think, no, this sets an awful precedent. I don't like it, sort of thing. I would like to see more of it in detail and understand. We can see it in a diagram, but I'd like to see pictures and images of the angles and that sort of thing, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brightman?
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, that I'd support a site visit as well, because it does seem a little strange to be operating office premises without toilet facilities.
Okay, I'm definitely getting the mood of the committee is to want to go and have a look at this thing. Steve, I'm going to ask, and maybe even James on this, in terms of where we sit with site visits. Would we organise a virtual one, given current restrictions?
If I can comment, Chairman,
please.
Yes, I think it would be a virtual site visit that would be organised, but I'm sure as officers we can organise. What we've done on a couple of other cases is the applicant has actually produced a small film for us. Members may remember Positano. The applicant produced a kind of almost akin to an estate agent's film. So, but even if the applicant can't or their agent can't, I'm sure we as officers can do something that gives that 360 view and shows the access road and all of the site surroundings in effect. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, well, I'm definitely getting the sense that we're looking to defer this one for a site visit, but I've got Councillor Chamdow indicating.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, but I forgot to mention the part about the step, how that artificial grass step actually fits in and what the purpose, because I remember Councillor Dillon mentioning it. But in terms of a site visit, I mean, that area is quite big in terms of if members were there. I mean, I'm sure we'd be a good distance apart. So I really can't see a problem of us actually going for a visit, because it is a vast area. It's not that we're going to go into a house. We're actually going to visually look at it from the outside, and look around the surrounding areas.
Yeah, I think we would all prefer to physically go and see the site itself, but I think we'd also have to take a view on what the restrictions are. You know, unnecessary journeys, and if we can have a virtual visit which gives us exactly the same, albeit we'd rather be there, but I think probably officers will help us with that one as when things can be organised. There's also a question of timescales, James, isn't there? Is there a clock ticking on this one to get it completed by a certain date? Okay, right, I'm not seeing anybody else indicate. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's one of those cases where I've mentioned it before, and during this pandemic, I suppose it's even more important. Pictures, always very, very important. And had we had more, we may have been able to make this decision now than previously. I don't know what's given to Meg in terms of pictures from the officer looking after the case, but 3 or 4 more pictures, and we could have been able to make a decision tonight, possibly. I just wanted to, say it, repeat myself again.
Okay. No, thank you, Councillor Dillon. Right, I've got Meg, you're indicating.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Dillon is correct. We should have had more photographs, and I do apologise to the committee for that. In terms of Councillor Chamdal's point about an actual site visit, I think that there isn't a reason why we can't do an actual site visit. Obviously, we need to get a legal viewpoint on whether this would constitute a journey that is allowable for officers and members, and there is space obviously for social distancing and so on the site. So it is possible, but first I think we need to establish whether such a journey is allowable, and I'm just wondering whether that is something that could be delegated to yourself and Councillor Duncan in consultation with our legal and James and myself to establish whether it was allowable, and if it was, then to set up a site meeting, and if it wasn't, then to set up a virtual site meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Good counsel there, Meg, and nicely followed up with Kerry putting her hand up. So over to you, Kerry.
Grateful, Chairman. There is a discretion to attend in the original format of going down to the site. There's no objection for that, but what's paramount is that everybody keeps safe. If the site visit was to be conducted virtually, I would highly recommend that it's done impartially, not the applicant, because it's important that the video captures all the relevant material planning considerations, and that it's probed by the officer or one of the managers, like from the council, rather than the applicant who has a ulterior motive. Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. Right, I've got Councillor Borough who's indicated. I'm not seeing anybody indicate after that. So Councillor Borough.
Thank you, Chairman. I definitely support site visit and also looking at the working condition in there as well, because it is a shipping container, and I'd like to see how the office has been converted into it.
Okay, are you seconding deferral and a site visit, Councillor Borough?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, because we are moved on that one. Right, so I'm not seeing anybody else indicate, so I can pause for breath now and try and pull this together as to what the next steps are, I guess. So I think the first thing to do is to confirm that the original proposal by Councillor Ahmed Wallana was withdrawn to approve officer's recommendation, and subsequently Councillor Ahmed Wallana moved to defer for a site visit. That was seconded by Councillor Bira. So we're at the point of members will be voting to defer for a site visit. I think what we'll then do then is, in consultation with myself and the Labour lead, we'll look at the arrangements that we have in place in conjunction with officers both from planning and legal. And I think between us, we'll come up with what is the most appropriate, legal and safe method to see more of this site. Would you be okay with that, Councillor Duncan?
I would. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so if we could make sure that's captured in the minutes, Steve. And I think at that point, we're ready now to move this one forward. So we are moved for deferral and site visits and seconded. So I can go to the vote. So we'll start with Councillor Chapman.
Defer for the site visit, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Wallana, you moved. Councillor Brightman.
Defer to site visit, please, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdale.
Yes, defer for a site visit, Chairman.
Councillor Tubadar.
Defer for a site visit, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, defer, please.
Councillor Bira, you seconded, so that leaves Councillor Dillon.
Defer for a site visit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Steve, I'll make that unanimous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 votes for deferral and site visit in a format that will be agreed at some point in the coming days.
Yes,
so agenda item 8 this evening is deferred. Okay, that brings us to the end of part 1. So for those watching on YouTube, we're going to have to bid you farewell. Thanks for watching. I hope you was able to follow us, but I think I'd also like to thank, while members of the public are watching, thank members and officers again for giving some pretty good scrutiny to the items that have come before us this evening. So on that note, we'll close the YouTube feed and bid everybody who's watching good night.